Hello everyone, welcome to today's presentation at reInvent 2020. We're here to talk about a deep dive into the AWS Schema conversion tool and AWS database migration service. My name is John Winfred and I'm a senior manager on the DBS team, here to talk to you today about this product. So, what are we going to talk about? Let's jump in and have a look at the agenda. First off, we're going to, of course, do an overview as to what are the database migration service and schema conversion tool. If you haven't seen these products before or haven't read about them on the web, this will just give you a good introduction as to what they're all about. We'll then talk about a little bit more on the product in terms of highlights, exactly what are the key things you can do with the two products, how they can help you achieve your business goals. And then for those of you that have, heard about DMS before or perhaps used it in the past, we're going to talk about what's new and what's changed since last year. The top features, the new additions, how it's bigger and better than ever before. And anybody that's ever seen a presentation that I've done before knows that I'm a huge fan of demos. So we are going to go and do a demo on some of the, or one of the new features that has been released in the last year for DMS before we finish off with just a few migration resources for you to go off and learn more about the product. So yeah, with that, let's get going. All right, DMS. Whoa, first off, let's start with some of the basics. Why would you migrate? You're going to migrate probably because you've got some issues. Maybe your infrastructure is getting a bit old. It's nearing the end of its operational life. Maybe there's a lack of redundancy. You don't have a feature called multi-availability zone. Well, it's a good reason to go to the cloud and look at that. AWS manages all this infrastructure for you, from power, low-level hardware, right through to networking, storage, and CPU, ensuring your applications and databases are available when you need them. AWS, of course, you can scale up. You can scale your instances up, scale them down, across the CPU and storage, but also giving you specialized options. Say, for example, you needed an instance that had more graphics power than your standard box. We, of course, have options available there. In the database space, you've got great things with systems like Aurora that offer the ability to scale out replicas to a level that you haven't seen, generally speaking. And overall, of course, things are just engineered for the cloud. Aurora Global Database has globally distributed systems to allow you to build out your applications in a region that matches best to your customers. Lots of other options out there, but basically you can do things in the cloud that's very hard to do otherwise. And then, of course, the other thing that always comes up is cost. With the cloud, you only pay for what you use. You turn it on, you turn it off, you scale it up, you scale it down. You only pay for when you're using it, and you stop paying when it's done. The other thing that we're big proponents of here at AWS is leveraging open source. With open source, you get the flexibility of features developed by a community, but also the cost savings that come with it. There's no licensing and ongoing software maintenance costs, if you will. And of course, innovation is another reason you're going to move to the cloud. As AWS deploys new features, you get them automatically. Whether that's the basics like a security patch through to great new functionality, it just comes. And that's a real good plus if you ask me. Of course, you also get access to new hardware. We recently released Graviton instances. AWS Graviton 2 processors deliver a major leap in performance and capabilities versus their x86 counterparts. You tend to get about 40% better performance over a comparable generation system. All right, so what is our goal with our migration tooling? Basically, it's all about allowing customers, you that is, to choose the best data platform for your needs. It's all about database freedom. So the two tools we use to primarily achieve this are the Schema Conversion tool, which converts your commercial database and data warehouse schemas to open source engines or AWS native services such as Aurora and Redshift. And then, of course, once you've converted the schema, you've got to move the data. And that's where the database migration service comes in. It allows you to securely migrate your data or replicate it from on-premises to the cloud or between systems in the cloud. Or if for whatever reason you need to get a copy of it back to on-prem, that's where DMS can also help you there. So it's been a fairly successful product. We launched way back at reInvent 2015. To this day, we've had over 300,000 databases migrated with DMS. You can see that number grows on a very regular basis. We do announcements and tweet, but there's some big customers out there that have used the product, and it's been pretty popular. So we've talked at a very high level about what DMS is. Let's go into the product overview. DMS can generally help you modernize, migrate, and replicate. What do I mean? Modernize, you're going to convert from one database engine to another and update the associated application code. You're generally going to do that with SCT to do the conversion. Migrate, you're looking to move data from point A to point B. That could be on-premises to the cloud, between EC2 and RDS, or between database engines or warehouses. And then replicate, you're going to leverage the power of CDC or change data capture to keep changes flowing from source to target on an ongoing basis. Let's go into it in a bit more detail. What does it all mean? You can migrate a business critical application. You could do something like migrate a data warehouse to Redshift, upgrade a minor major version. So sometimes you have to take a small outage when you're upgrading, say, from one version of a database to a newer version. That may not always be acceptable to your business. So some people use DMS to minimize that, and they do that by they'll spin up a new version on the latest software for a given database engine and use DMS to migrate from the old one to the new one, keeping everything active on the old one, and then just take a small outage while you update a DNS record and migrate over to the newest system. You can do other neat things like consolidate shards. You can archive old data off to S3 because if you're not using that old historical information, it's much cheaper to store it in S3 than it is in a live database. And of course, you can migrate between different database engine types. Other people use DMS to migrate across regions, to spin up their own replicas, if you will. You can migrate data back to on-premises if you need to have a dev system that's relatively current to something you have in the cloud. Or the other very popular thing people use it for is data lakes. It might be called the database migration service, but lots of people use it for ongoing replication. You can feed your data lakes, you can pull in multiple different sources, populate it, consolidate the information. Or the other option, of course, is to use it to replicate your streaming platforms. You can stream transactional information out to Kinesis and do something with it via DMS. So, what are some of the neat product highlights with DMS? You can do some stuff like pre-migration assessment. What that means is we check that everything's all, let's just say, copacetic on your database before you get going with the migration. Make sure that you have no problems with unsupported data types, or maybe you haven't configured logging properly on your database. It basically prevents unnecessary time-consuming runtime migration failures. Data validation is another cool one. Basically, it makes sure that all the data has migrated across properly from source to target. And one of the things that's really neat about it is it doesn't work just on that initial bulk load from your source system to the target. It also works for the ongoing replication stream. So as data is replicating across, it makes sure that all that came across as well. And just for those that are interested, one of the key things about DMS is it lets you migrate from one database type to another. And this validation works for both homogeneous and heterogeneous migrations, which is pretty cool from a technological standpoint if you think about it. And then there's just some other options like snowball integration. If you have an absolutely massive amount of data that you need to move, there's no upper limits on the amount of data you can move with DMS, but there comes a point where your internet bandwidth probably just can't handle it if you're going from, say, an on-premises or a data center to the cloud, and you can use Snowball to move the data for you. All right, so then there's the schema conversion tool. The idea behind this is you're going to modernize your database or modernize your data warehouse. You can see on the screen you can convert between a whole range of different databases, from commercial to open source, or even between open source databases. If you've started off doing a migration with say you move things to MySQL and you decided that maybe you want to look more at Postgres or want to focus your talents there, you can use SCT to convert from a MySQL system to a Postgres system or vice versa. And then, of course, just want to highlight data warehouses, great thing to use SCT for. All right, so some key things on what you can do with SCT. Well, you have, of course, an assessment report. You're not just going to jump in blindly and do a migration without really knowing how easy it is to convert from one engine to another. This will tell you how easy or hard it is to convert from the engine you're looking at to some potential targets, whether that's a MySQL-based or Postgres engine, or say if you're looking to go in from a data warehouse to Redshift. It recommends the best target engine, provides the detailed level of effort to complete the migration, and some other neat things it does. We do appreciate that you can't always move to open source. You might have some packaged software that is stuck on a commercial engine. One of the things SCT can do is it can scan your database, look at the features you're using, and say, hey, you could actually move this enterprise version of your, say, SQL Server database to a standard edition if you used RDS SQL Server, because RDS SQL Server will bring some features to the table that aren't available in, they weren't normally available in a standard edition of the database. The other thing SCT does is it converts not only your schema, but also your code. So it'll convert those tables, but it'll also convert the stored procedures and the functions. And it also can help you with application conversion. It'll scan your application code and say, hey, I see a SQL statement in here. Let's update it to look like the new database engine you're targeting. And just to reiterate again, you can use it to migrate data from data warehouses to Redshift. Essentially what happens is you have a local agent, dumps the data to disk, gets all compressed, uploaded to S3, and then ingested into Redshift automatically. Here's just an example of what an assessment report looks like. Every database is going to be different. You get a nice executive summary at the top, some bar graphs that show different types of objects and how much are converted automatically, and then there's a detailed section down below which tells you each of the action items you might need to complete manually. Then we're talking about the data extractors. So these are the data extractors I was mentioning earlier to pull data out from a local data warehouse, optimize it for Redshift, compress it up, upload it to S3, and then get ingested automatically into Redshift system. It's a pretty straightforward way to do a migration from a legacy data warehouse into a cloud-based system like Amazon Redshift. And then, of course, there's other things. So what about those ETL jobs you have? You've got your BTEC packages, for example, or Oracle Data Integrator packages. SCT can also help convert those packages automatically to Glue. So you can run your run SCT against it, and it'll migrate those ETL packages as an ETL Glue migration as a separate project to allow you to continue doing that sort of ETL work in the cloud. So let's have a quick look at how DMS can enable near zero downtime migration. You can use DMS for relational migrations and migrating relational data into Redshift. You kick things off by launching a replication instance. And make PowerPoint work. There we go, the replication instance is up and running. Now this replication instance is basically an EC2 box with replication software installed on it, but you don't connect to it in any way, shape, or form. We manage it all for you. So you can interact with it through the AWS console or also through the CLI or an SDK. You define your endpoints. So how do I connect to my source database? How do I connect to my target database? Basically ODBC connection strings. And then you say, what is it I want to move? Now, DMS is a logical replication product. What that means is we don't just move everything down to the file level, the whole database at once. You can say specific tables or specific rows in tables. So you say what it is you're looking to move, and then you kick off the replication task, and the data gets migrated from the source to the target. And optionally, you can enable ongoing replication to keep things in sync while you do all your testing and validation, get comfortable with your new target. And when you're ready, at a time that works for your business, you take a small outage, you update your DNS records, and boom, you're now looking at your target system and you're good to go. So just to reiterate, DMS does both homogeneous, like-to-like migrations, as well as heterogeneous migrations. In fact, generally speaking, if you're doing a homogeneous migration, you might be better off to look at a native way of doing it. Say, for example, you're moving from a Postgres system into RDS Postgres or what have you. You might want to look at setting up a read replica. But that's not to say DMS won't work perfectly well. You can use it for any type of migration you want, but it's just really important to highlight that you can do things like go from one database engine to another, as well as from a database engine to something like an S3 bucket if you wanted to. You can also merge technologies. So you could take a SQL backup file, import it into RDS SQL Server via S3, and then use DMS just to do the replication to catch up on what's changed since you took that backup. All right, so other neat things? Everyone's heard about microservices, right? It's the new way to go. It enables scalability, redundancy, and a faster development timeline as everyone can work on a small piece of the puzzle without having to work for wait for a monolithic development rollout, if you will. One of the cool things you can do with DMS, because it is that logical replication product I mentioned earlier, is you can migrate bits of the information from your legacy database to other databases that make sense. So you might move some of it to S3, you might move some of the data to Aurora, some might make more sense to put into Elasticsearch, or other things go into a data warehouse. So you can fan out, and conversely, if you ever wanted to, you could fan in. So a good example of fan in is if you had a lot of MySQL shards in the past, you could consolidate them all into a single Aurora instance. Big old screen to look at. Feel free to go back and look later. Our documentation always has the most recent updates. Here's all the supported sources and targets for DMS today. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing, but you can see we support a large range of source and targets across relational, NoSQL, analytics, and data warehouses. Whew. So, what has changed? What have we done in the last year? Time has not stood still. We have, of course, rolled out to some new regions. Since last year, we have now made DMS available in both Africa, in Cape Town, as well as in Europe, in the new Milan region. We've also added new support for R5, C5, and T3 instances to make sure we pass on the latest performance and cost savings to you as the customer. Next thing we've done is added more support for newer and improved versions of database engines. So we've got Oracle 19c, SQL Server 2019, Postgres 12, and so on. We've also added some new Amazon Database Engine targets, so Neptune, MSK, and of course also added the ability to migrate from Mongo. Whenever a new engine comes along, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be added to DMS. Data, what have we added there? Well, you guys may know that PostgreSQL has pretty strong support for spatial data types. It took us a little while, but we've added spatial data type support to DMS so you can migrate from those legacy systems into Postgres. We've also improved our lob handling, including performance, new targets like DynamoDB and Kafka, and support for validation of lobs. We've added data transformations, which is what I'm going to be showing you in the demo, to allow you to do simple schema object transformations, changing case, prefix, suffix, and of course changing data types, adding information, and using expressions to modify values. We've also greatly expanded data validation, supported adding more data types into that, as well as adding DB2 as a source. Security and manageability is always very important for us at AWS. Basically, we've added new things like support for TLS 1.2 to a range of engines, including MySQL and SQL Server. We've got a brand new console to make it easier for you to use DMS and improve the validation. We've improved reliability, put a lot of effort in there, and it's unlikely the replication instance will ever encounter problems, but if it does, it's now going to come up faster than ever before. We've also created a set of tools to make it easier for you to diagnose any problems that relate to your existing on-premises systems, and we've done a complete sweep of our documentation, which should make it easier than ever before to use DMS and SCT. As I said, I'm always a big fan of demos, so let's get into it and show you how it works. As I mentioned, the demo today is showing you how to use some of the new transformations that are available in DMS. All right, let's get the demo going. Here we go. So I am a big fan of using an EC2 instance in the cloud to do everything. So I've logged on to my EC2 instance here and launching dbeaver. dbeaver just allows me to query multiple different databases at once. In this case, we're going to migrate information from a SQL Server system to Aurora Postgres. That's what I'm trying to do today. So this is just a demo database, very small, simple, but it gets the idea across. I'm just going to have a look at some of the data in the system. This is the customer table. We're going to spend some time looking at it today. You can see it's got a first name, last name, and a phone number. Then just going and looking at my Aurora Postgres target, just so you can see it's completely empty, nothing in there. So now we're going to go and kick things off by launching SCT and starting some of the connection information and getting the conversion going. SCT is a free download you can get from our website. Just go download it. A variety of different client platforms supported, Windows, Linux, Mac, what have you. You can go and get the latest version of the client. It also always checks for updates. Highly recommend you use the most recent version because we do make a fair few changes. We're going to kick off a new project. You can see it supports transactional, data warehouse, and NoSQL projects. In this case, I know I'm going to go from SQL Server to Aurora Postgres, so I'm just going to select it. But remember, you could always run an assessment report and have it recommend targets for you. I'm going to define my endpoints connecting to SQL Server. I've done it before, so that's why some of the information is pre-populated there. You saw the error message about SSL pop up. Again, these are just my demo databases here, but SCT has support for SSL, so it's just recommending that you use it. While it's doing a quick scan of the information, I'm going to go across and have a look at DMS, get the information going there, just sign in on the console like you're used to using for every other product. Go in here, go to DMS, and let's just have a quick look around. We're going to start off by going to replication instances. Remember, this is that EC2 server, if you will. It has replication software installed on it. I've already got one up and going. Let's just flip back to SCT for a sec, establish that connection to the Aurora Postgres target. Again, I've done it before, so that information is in there. Warns me about SSL. Just say, yeah, that's quite okay. And now on the left, I've got my source. On the right, I've got my target. Again, we're going to migrate the demo schema, which is under DBO. Go in here. Here's all those tables you saw right at the start with dbeaver. We're going to go in and first run what I call the, it's called the assessment report, right? So it's going to tell me how easy or hard it is to do the conversion. Again, this is a sample database, so pretty straightforward, but SCT can handle some pretty gnarly, complicated systems and get really good conversion rates overall. So just going to generate that report. Should pop up in a second here. And you can see up at the top, you've got a nice executive summary, good to explain to people what's going on. Some bar charts show you how easy it is to convert your tables, your constraints, your indexes in this case, and there's more information down below. Once we've got that report going, I'm just going to go in straight into converting the schema. So now it's doing the automatic conversion. Everything's in memory. It hasn't applied yet to my Aurora Postgres target. But you can now click into each of the tables and see the source code on the top and the new generated conversion on the bottom. I'm just going to make a minor tweak. It's kind of a weird thing with the sample database. It has an order table, which, as you guys all know, order is often a keyword for SQL for databases. So I'm just going to change it back to lowercase like it was. And here I'm going to start working on the transformation. So I'm adding this full name column to the customer table. Just typing it in. I want to add a new column. Going to be the same data type as before, just twice as long. And it's just going to make it so you can directly edit the schema and add it to the new target system. So I'm going to hit apply to database. Just lets you know, okay, there's an extension pack there previously, nothing to worry about. And now it's basically going to have applied that empty schema to Aurora. So if I go back to dbeaver and refresh my Aurora instance here, you can see that now that schema has appeared. And if we go and look at it, there's all of our tables, all lowercase because, Postgres does lowercase versus SQL Server's camel case. And we can go check out this customer table, and you'll see we have this new column added, the full name column, but of course there's no data there yet because we haven't migrated it with DMS. So we switch back to DMS. I've already pre-created my endpoints. You can see I've got my Aurora Postgres target and I had my SQL Server source, and I'm going to go now and create a replication task. Now this replication task basically says what data do I want to move from the source to the target, which replication instance do I use to do it, select my endpoint, SQL Server source, Aurora target, and now I have to define what it is I want to migrate. So to be clear, this target table prep mode basically says, hey, I've already got tables created in my target, SCT did it, leave them alone, and always turn on logging to make sure that any errors that may get accounted for are recorded. I say what it is I want to move, so I'm going to move stuff from my DBO schema, and I want to include everything. That's what the wildcard's all about. And now I need to add some transformations. The very first transformation I need to do is for my schema. The schema was originally called DBO on the source. SCT created a generated name. And if we go over here, you can see it's demodb_dbo, sort of merging the database name and the schema name. So I just want to put this rename clause in there to make sure that DMS, when it finds anything from DBO on the source, it renames it to demodbo on the target. The other thing, like I mentioned, SQL Server does camel case, Aurora Postgres does lowercase. So what I'm going to do is for my tables and my columns, I'm going to make sure that those are renamed, or basically the case is changed from camel case to lowercase. So that's what these couple of transformations are doing, changing things from camel to lowercase. Once that's done, I need to do something manually. So I'm going to switch to the JSON editor, and you can see all those transformations we were just talking about have all been generated for you, but I'm going to add one at the end. And the one I'm going to add at the end is the one to take my first name and last name and concatenate it and put it into the full name field in my target. Now, to make sure I don't do any typos during this demo, I just pre-created the text. You can see I'm just copying it from Notepad, paste it in here to the JSON editor, and let's have a closer look at it. You can see that we're doing a transformation, different data type. Where is it coming from? It's coming from the DBO schema, the customers table. And what are we doing? Well, we're concatenating first name and last name with a space in there into the new full name target. Hit create task. One thing I can guarantee you is it does error checking. You can see there's a bit of an error there at the bottom. It means I made a mistake. Pretty straightforward mistake if we look at it. Basically what happens is between the different transformations in the JSON, I just forgot a comma. So go put that comma in there and try to run the task again. I've got this DMS task set up to start on create, so just hit create task, and now it should kick off and start moving. You can see right there on the DMS console it says creating. It takes a few seconds to create the task, and then of course depending on the amount of the number of tables, I should say, and the amount of data, the task will take varying amounts of time to run. Again, I use a small sample database for these demos, so we don't have to wait too long. So this one won't take too long to run at all. You can always flip back to your database query tool, in this case dbeaver, and just see if anything's happening. Go back in here and I'll just hit refresh to see if any information's flowed across. Nothing's there quite yet. Give it another second, maybe I'll flip back to DMS, do a bit of a refresh here, see if what's happened. You can see at the start, rather at the top, the task has been created successfully, the migration is going, and you can see the status there says starting. Sometimes the console takes a few seconds to refresh. Good way to shortcut it, go back to your query tool, rerun it, and look, you can see the information's migrated across. We've got our first name, our last name, and now the full name is in there in the new target. So that's a pretty neat thing you can do. You can now manipulate your data during your migration. Neat new feature we added to DMS in the last year. Moving on, migration resources. Well, hopefully this has all been quite interesting to you, and now you're interested in learning more. So how can we help you at AWS? Well, first off, let's talk about the Database Freedom Program. If you're a large enterprise and looking at moving a large number of databases from open source or from commercial systems to the cloud, the Database Freedom is a great program to help you accelerate that migration with incentives, technical assistance, support, training, and so on. Do reach out to your account manager if you're interested in learning more. Another way you can get some great help if you're interested in it is to talk to our database migration partners. Here's a sampling of partners that are available to help. There's lots more out there as well. Again, if you have an account manager, feel free to reach out to them. They can direct you to a great one in your geographical area, or just reach out to us through the Contact Us page, and we're happy to help. There's lots more partners also listed on the Amazon APN portal if you want to go take a look. And then resources, everything from getting started guides through to pricing. There's also some good step-by-step walkthroughs. Highly suggest you check out the blogs. There's always some good articles published there. And of course, references to the SDK and command line interfaces. If you want to know how to do things down at a detailed level, there's some good documentation out there. And as I mentioned, we've recently updated all of it with DMS. So this reInvent session, there's always some other interesting things for you to check out. Here's some related sessions that you may find interesting. Do feel free to go take a look at them or any of the other ones in the reInvent catalog. So thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully this has been an interesting session for you. Look forward to hearing more from you, and keep an eye on the new releases for DMS. There's always some new features coming out. And do remember to complete the session survey. It's always good to get your feedback, know areas we can improve, and looking forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you very much.